Are you both under the impression that menopause is still stigmatized for women?
Yes, some have been described as disabilities, not in the menopausal context, but individuals suffer from depression.
Dr. Siobhain O'Mahony and Eimear Gleeson, Senior Lecturer and Commercial Lead at University College Cork.
Women think when you're going towards menopause, your ovaries shut down, not producing estrogen anymore. But in actual fact, you produce estrogen in your brain, in your bone, in your liver, you produce it in all fat in your body. The most of the fat that you produce it is from your breast. So in actual fact, as we age, estrogen production in our breast tissue increases. So therefore, if you don't go through menopause and you don't have your decline in estrogen from your ovaries, then you will have probably maybe too much estrogen circulating around the body.
There's over 600 supplements on the market for menopause in the US that have make claims around menopause. You can buy them over the counter. I guess they range from just vitamin and mineral preparations that say menopause to different kind of herbal preparations, some that are kind of related to Eastern medicine. So the range is really broad. And I think it's just really important to know that the supplement space is not a regulated space. So while there are some rules and regulations around what you can write on packets, it differs between different jurisdictions, and also it's extremely hard to implement those rules because the category is so vast. I think it's really important for women who are looking for things to speak to their healthcare professionals.
Bonded by Science, proudly presented by Noble Blocks.
Okay, so I have a couple very, very short questions I would like to just clear. I just want to clear the air.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay, so are you both under the impression that menopause is still a stigmatized biological phenomena for women?
Yes.
Could the symptoms be so severe that they would otherwise qualify as a disability?
Yes, some have been described as disabilities.
They have been described as disabilities.
Not in the menopausal context, but individuals suffer from depression, for example.
Okay.
Which is one symptom.
Would you say that because some of the symptoms can be so severe, so debilitating, that this is contributing to some of the stigma that we are experiencing?
Yes, definitely. I think, the lack of confidence, people don't want to open up and they feel weak. So absolutely.
Or they'll be perceived as weak.
Absolutely.
I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any numbers on how many women are transitioning on a yearly basis into menopause?
It's estimated about 25 million globally.
25 million?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of women. And if we were just to say 25 million women are transitioning into menopause, how long will those 25 million women potentially experience menopause symptoms?
For about 10 years each, on average.
On average, 10 years.
Yeah.
If someone did a quick search on Google, they might think that menopause is like a lack of estrogen, or like somehow women become deficient of estrogen. Is that view still valid today?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Estrogen is needed in so many parts of our body, and so many of the symptoms of menopause are related to the lack of estrogen because our ovaries shut down.
Okay. And is that the primary contributor to, say, like the numerous symptoms?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. Because we're used to estrogen being produced by our ovaries, and once that is shut off, then we need to produce it in more local environments.
I'm aware that there are some treatments. What is the most prevalent treatment for women undergoing menopause?
I suppose for Eimear, you've done a good amount of research here.
Well, the paradigm for treatment is so broad, and it goes all the way from lifestyle interventions and complementary and alternative type therapies right through to prescription medications and HRT. But HRT really is considered the gold standard treatment for most women.
HRT, hormonal replacement therapy. So I recently had an interview with someone that talked about how that we could potentially be reaching a production capacity when it comes to pharmaceutical medications. And I would estimate that hormonal replacement therapy would fall under that category. Have you guys uncovered anything along those lines, like that we might not be able to produce enough?
Yeah, we can produce enough now. Currently in Ireland, there's a huge deficit, and in the new year in Ireland, 2025, we have free HRT free hormone replacement therapy. And it sounds great, but there won't be enough.
Okay. That could be, that could actually trigger some unnecessary worry, you know, well, necessary worry, but unnecessarily so, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a current problem, though. You know, it's not. This isn't a future problem that we're talking about. Across the UK as well, there are big shortages of HRT, especially the gel HRTs, and it's a huge challenge for many women and their doctors.
Okay, so realistically, you're going through menopause, you're transitioning, and you're a candidate for the therapy, and you just simply can't get it. So they just send you home and you're just like, okay.
Or you start
Thank you.
on a therapy and
you start
on a therapy and you can no longer, and it really works for you. I've heard women say this, that it really works for them, and suddenly they can't get that particular brand. So it's a real upsetting time to start on a new one that doesn't work.
And it's not a one size fits all. So if there's a particular product that's working for you, it's important that it continues to be made available for women. Being transferred to another delivery modality or another brand isn't always effective. And that's really where the challenge is. It's really difficult. I mean, if you're talking about financial price, it's difficult to put a number on it, really. But there was one
Let's
study. Let's try. Yeah. There was one study that estimated that women who are diagnosed with menopause, who are seeking medical treatment for menopause, spend 45% more on healthcare costs every year.
I mean, can we give some concrete numbers?
There's days lost. Well, I suppose there haven't been a lot done in Ireland. We are currently trying to, I suppose, scope out what's happening in Ireland for women as well. But paper or studies have been published from the US showing that days lost from work. So this is also a major thing that we've uncovered, is that women just won't turn up at work because they don't feel well or they don't feel supported.
Right.
So I think the cost of that in the US in 1 year, in 2023, I think, was about 1.8 billion.
Yeah.
So it's incredible. And then medical costs then was about 25 billion in 1 year. But we do need to do this across the island of Ireland as well.
Yeah, and this is also because Ireland has like some of the health, like unlike the US, you know, you guys have the, I'll say luxury, because it's still a luxury, I think, that we have some subsidized healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even with that subsidized, you can still expect 45% more in what you're going to...
Yeah, you currently have to pay for your HRT.
You have to pay for it?
Yes, which is about, could be 60, I'm not sure now, but I think on average it depends on the brand, it could be about 60 or 70 euro per month. And this is what the new policy is in January in 2025, is free HRT for everybody that needs it. So that wording is really upsetting women as well.
But those costs also relate to things like GP visits, visits to physiotherapy. So we know that joint pain is a major symptom of menopause. It covers a whole plethora of interaction that women have with healthcare systems and healthcare services. And that's why it's difficult to say this is the amount extra women are paying, but roughly we can expect that they're paying, 45% more than women who aren't experiencing severe menopause symptoms.
I was just curious because, I'm in the age bracket, I think. So, or soon to be, or I maybe already entered. I'm just quite curious to know, like financially, what should I expect? And I think there will be some other women that are just, in their 30s and they're thinking that this is so far away from them. But I think we can all attest our 30s went really fast.
Yeah. Eimear has that luxury still. She's not out of her 30s.
I'm right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But
I am.
It goes fast. So am I.
It does.
Yeah. And I was just thinking, okay, this is like another cost that you would have to budget for. And this is not necessarily like something you want to go, you don't want to take shortcuts.
No, you don't. But it's really hard to know how much time you need to put into it and how much money you need to spend. And it's really person by person specific. I've spoken to friends and they're at their GP every second week trying to find answers, while I currently haven't attended a GP for any of my symptoms, self-treating. But, so it's difficult to put a price tag on it, but it's something that people need to prepare for. But you can prepare for yourself lifestyle-wise, not even budget-wise, but lifestyle-wise. It's important to prepare pre-perimenopause.
And we'll get into that on how to prepare, because I think a lot of people would like to hear about that. I do have a couple more questions about how about the investment firms? Because you said like globally it was a huge number. It was 25, right?
Every year, yeah.
But every year.
Yeah. Go through the transition.
Yes. And then are like investment firms, are they starting to are they noticing now that this is a huge market? And
yes.
Yeah, they are.
Yes is the answer. And, it's really a recent thing, though. If you look 10 years ago at investments into women's health, there was a big focus on reproduction and fertility. But we've really seen an emergence of interest in areas like menopause, incontinence, reduced bone density, endometriosis, so other conditions that are maybe less widely spoken about in the media. But I mean, from an investor's perspective, it's an incredible market opportunity. This is something that half of the world are going to experience, and they're going to be dealing with it probably for 5 to 10 years of their lives. And it's also an area, because there's been so little research dedicated to women's health, or this particular need within women's health, the opportunity for innovation is really vast,
Okay, so it's a blue ocean, one could say.
It's a blue ocean.
Why did it only start then? What was the lag? Where were they? Where was the incentive? Why is it only now?
I mean, I think it reflects society's attitude to menopause as well. These were problems traditionally that women were to manage themselves. And actually, lots of women didn't even feel comfortable talking about their symptoms with doctors and their healthcare providers until recently. So I guess the attitude of the investment community is probably reflecting the attitude of our whole society towards menopause and prioritizing well-being of women during perimenopause and menopause.
But you're also saying it's because women started to become maybe more open about it, because I'm sure there are a lot of men that are doing research in women's health, and I'm sure there are.
There are.
Yeah, I would imagine there are. But is it because you think that women are just starting to say, okay, enough, and then we'll start talking about it, and that's why you see the change in attitude that is then reflected in the investment?
I think so. I think because our voices are getting a little bit louder now, and people are realizing that women want, they want something, and they want to feel better. So I suppose then, industry and investors are starting to see that this is really an opportunity now, because they hear women crying out for interventions. So that's probably it as well. But also the popularity on, social media, but also on our radio and on TV as well. I don't know if I need to mention names, but I mean, it was been fantastic over the last few years, real advocates of menopause. But we still need to send the correct message. It's great that there's investment and there's interest in the field, but, we just need to send the correct message that more funding is needed, more research is still needed behind these therapies as well, not just lots of money thrown at opportunities to actually develop supplements and develop interventions, but real science is needed behind these as well.
Yeah, so funding, so it's also the government's responsibility to step up.
Absolutely.
It's also about some of the larger pharmaceutical companies to step up. I mean, they also support a lot of research. In Denmark, we have Novo Nordisk. They support tons of research.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm glad that you brought up the science, because this is one of the reasons why we're together, is because you have also been very prolific in your research, but it hasn't always been in women's health per se, right? It had a different origin. Could you give the short origin story and then where you are today?
basically, we started off 20 years ago. I won't go through the full 20 years. 20 years ago, working on what was nearly termed then, but people were just too polite to say it, was voodoo science. Right. So we were one of the first groups in the world to use the phrase, or to be able to discover the science or the theory behind the microbiome gut-brain axis. So we started working on that area with regard to, I suppose, the early life period, so the postnatal period, looking at different stressors during that time and how different microbes were not, I suppose, were disrupted with regard to colonizing the infant gut and how that affected brain development. So that's really where I started. And I started working on male animals a long time ago and continue to work on male animals for a long time. But then I suppose over the last 5 years, our funding agencies insist that we work and we use females in our animal studies, but also then it wasn't just that. I know you spoke about my papers. I have a lot of papers and I'm very proud of my papers and my H index and so on. But to be absolutely honest, it wasn't enough. It isn't enough. As in, having papers that the scientific community reads, that I can do interviews about, that wasn't helping the human population in my eyes. So I started working in endometriosis about 3 to 4 years ago, which is a chronic pain condition that affects 1 in 10 women. And not in the reproductive age, I was just about to say that, but it also is in the menopausal period as well. So I've started working in menopause then over the last 2 years. So women's health is really where I've brought my research and really where I found my passion, to be absolutely honest, because it's been underfunded and under-researched forever, not for so many years, but forever. So I think, the drive and the enthusiasm in the patients and the public that I speak to as well as my collaborators and Eimear, my colleague here as well, you can see the real passion in people. And this is really where I see my future going now.
As someone on the outside looking in at that story, those years, they prepared you.
Yes.
Right. So they really prepared you, and now you're such a strong voice, not only in research, but also outside of research. And I think that was what you meant when you said the papers are not enough. Yes,
absolutely. Yeah.
Can you explain to me and to anyone that's listening, of course, the relationship that the two of you have nurtured in the last, 2, 3, 4 years?
Not even that long.
Not even that long. Okay.
2 years, probably 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, maybe I'll start and I can tell you where I met Siobhain. Well, maybe just a little bit of background. First, I started my career as a dietitian, but very shortly after went back into academia and worked in academic research for a while before moving over to the business side. And I've spent the last nearly 10 years working with food and nutrition multinational companies, and also in investment roles in food and nutrition and life sciences. And I was working for a venture capital investor when I met Siobhain, actually. And she had come to talk about this vision she had for a women's health company that developed targeted microbiome interventions for unmet needs within women's health. And I was just blown away by her passion for the subject, by the science underpinning it. And I left that job, and together we wrote a grant so that we could pursue this work that she's trying to get off the ground. And my role in all of it really is to drive the translation into products and services that have the potential to benefit women.
Well, they say it's the crazier person follows the other crazier person.
Oh no, person, right? I would say Eimear's the sanest of the
two. There's a video about that. It's like
really?
It's like there's a dancing video about how everyone looks at the guy on the beach and he gets up and he starts dancing and like, oh, that guy's crazy. No. It's the first person that follows him.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Well, I would honestly think that I'm the crazier of the two of us.
I'll send you the video. I'll find it. I'll send it to you. Yeah. But it sounds like the two of you have really found some common ground.
Yeah. And to be absolutely, and in some ways, I suppose our uncommon ground is actually what's made this partnership so efficient, and so, I'm so confident in it going forward, because we've such a different skill set, but actually what we've, which is great, and what I actually needed, because I've learned, always when I collaborated with individuals, it was, people that had maybe 50%, 60% overlap with my skill set. And then, they had just something else to add to a study. But when I met Eimear, it was just the questions she asked me when she was working for the venture capitalist company, and she really could see in those really early days the value and the potential of this women's health company, and also then when we started working together, then it was just really obvious that it's a really good and perfect partnership actually. So
tell me about the company.
Yeah, she's not a company yet, because we still have our academic grant. So it's under the umbrella of University College Cork. So we have had the privilege to receive funding from Enterprise Ireland, who believed in our vision to develop the science really behind our supplement. So I suppose over the last 20 years, I've learned an awful lot about the microbiome, how to manipulate it, what to put into the gut to actually make a person feel better. And now I've applied it here to women's health. And our first product would be a menopause symptom reduction or improving outcomes for menopause product. So over the next 18 months, we're going to work on the science behind this product. We have a team here in University College Cork, including Eimear and a postdoc and a wonderful collaborator. And then we're also going to run a human trial after Christmas as well. So this will really, I suppose, bolster what we've already put into the development of this product. So it'll just make it really sound. We'll be really happy with the science, the clinical validation of our products going forward, looking for investments. So we're hoping to, what they say, spin out of University College Cork, which basically means that you jump out of the university into the business world. So we aim to do that at the end of 2025.
So you have a plan, it's mapped out.
Yep.
And it's on its way.
And Eimear's mapping it too.
Okay. Yes, yeah, it's your plan.
But we're really lucky to be working within this ecosystem in Ireland that is really committed to supporting academic entrepreneurship, and provides, there are specific funding avenues that you can look to, and this is one of the ones that we have benefited from, that is really targeted to like world-class science, but that has the potential to be translated into products that can be commercialized.
I'm also a very strong believer in like the academic translation, like bringing science out into the real world. Do you think there's enough of this happening? Like, you have a really great setup here. And of course, if I were you, I would be super happy and excited and thrilled.
I think there's been, I would say that I think there's been a shift since, when I look back to when I worked in academia, that actually entrepreneurship, commercialization, translation of science has become a more important part of the academic career. And Siobhain, maybe you'd have a perspective on that, and you also, Shellie, than it was years ago when really it was all about publications. I think academics are now incentivized actually to look at other ways to demonstrate the value of the work that they do. And that's a really positive thing.
Yeah, I agree, definitely, Eimear. I suppose since, when I started as a lecturer in 2008, and absolutely then it was about you getting grants, it was about publishing, it was about H indices, it was about PhD students being, ploughed out of your lab. But there haven't been that many commercial grants in this university, but I absolutely know that what we have achieved together, even to date, by getting this grant and doing our training, all the training along the way, and motivating others within the lab is really appreciated. And there's a lot of excitement that we have this grant here, and that we can motivate others to do it and help them get off the ground, because it's getting on. And this is a question I keep being asked, is how you get onto that ladder, and why did you do it, and how did you do it? And I keep saying, well, it was the people around me, and I just kept asking loads of questions, and I talked and talked and talked to so many people until you meet the right people.
If we just say you guys are sitting on the forefront, there's other people like you also. It's not that you're not alone. There's other researchers around the world that are, translating the science out of the lab. One of the things that I saw was that it was harder to meet people like Eimear. Like, as a scientist, to find someone like her, like Eimear, I mean, like that doesn't happen very often. It's not like a scientist publishes and some, business developer with, great commercial sense is just sitting there waiting for you to pass it off. So what would you say now then to researchers that are working on their papers and they're writing them up? Do you think that the current paper, the way that we produce and publish our science, actually facilitates this idea of bringing science out to society?
It's just so many papers published these days. I don't know if it's a topic you've covered, Shellie, in the podcast, but the volume of academic publications is enormous. And I can tell you from my time working both in, in a multinational and also with the venture investors, you don't have time to review the literature, or the literature review that you have time to do is very targeted, and it's based on leads that you get because of very smart people that you meet. And what I would say about Siobhain is she was just so proactive in engaging with the investment community and also with lots of different industry partners as well. She does lots of work with different industry too. And that's how you meet people. You meet people by going out to talk to people. Or that's certainly how I would view it anyway.
Would you give advice to people that it's okay to just share your ideas? Because maybe some scientists that are thinking about commercializing their ideas are like worried that people are going to steal them. What advice would you give to a scientist considering entrepreneurship?
Well, I suppose I've learned, I was never really afraid that stuff my ideas would be stolen, I suppose. But, there is good advice that can be, achieved or taken from our centre here, the UCC Innovation. Like, they'll tell you how to protect your idea, but still to be able to entice people to, listen to you and maybe chat with you again another time. So that's, I suppose, how I got into it initially, was that, my colleague here, another Eimear, but spelled differently, Eimear O'Shea, spent a lot of time talking to her and then her promoting me to investors and, pitching my idea I thought it was too early, but in actual fact, it gave me the confidence and it made me research my idea and understand what, investors wanted, even in those very early days when I actually wasn't looking for investment. I was looking for validation of the idea and feedback from them and to meet new people to see if this was something anybody would be interested in. So people, and I do know a lot of scientists are very afraid that their idea will be stolen, but to be absolutely honest, 90%, if not more, cannot be commercialized anyway. So you need to actually talk to people, but to be absolutely honest, but you need to actually talk to people to validate that your research can be commercialized. So until you start talking and telling people, you have no idea how or if it is a valid commercial idea. You have to talk to customers, and they could be all manner of people, like industry, actual patients. I talk to so many pregnant women and menopausal women and clinicians and gynecologists, reproductive scientists, and then industry partners or venture capitalists to see if this could be commercialized. And the first few ideas I had weren't possible.
I think that's fantastic advice. So what I pulled from that was, first of all, start talking early, because you don't even know if your idea is valid. So the first thing you're seeking is this idea valid? And, can it, spark the interest? And the second thing is that it might not even be commercializable. So,
and that's okay. And I have been told that it's absolutely okay. And maybe you should stay in the lab. And I was thinking, oh, that's a nice safe space. But it wasn't what I wanted. That was some of the feedback I have received on previous ideas, is maybe you should stay in the lab because you're really good at that. And I was like, okay, thanks. And then it was kind of disheartening as well, going, can I not achieve this new thing?
Did people actually say you should stay in the lab?
Yes. And they were polite about it. They were like, you're good at this. So maybe you should stay there. I don't know whether they were trying to make me feel better or worse, but it actually only stimulated me to move on, because I said, I've been in the lab. I've really enjoyed it. I'm training my mentees to be in the lab and to support our science, which we'll continue to do. So that's why I feel confident moving into this area as well, and moving into the commercial and business areas, because we still have and will still have a really great science base. There's some people in our lab that are really interested in moving forward with us and being the scientists for our company. So that's why I feel confident about moving forward, but still having a great science base with my, younger mentees in our lab then.
I think I can understand the desire, or maybe the extra fuel that you needed to keep pushing was because, if my research isn't something that can be commercialized, then why am I working on it? Right? That could be, then I should, then I should switch or do something else.
Yes.
I could see, at least in the back of my mind, that's what I might think. So maybe, yeah. I would like to dive into some of the research that you're doing.
Super.
I was thinking when I was reading through some of your papers that we're going to be talking a lot about the female gut. And for those that are relatively new to the term gut microbiome, I thought it would be nice if we could just lay down some basic definitions. What is the gut microbiome? Could you put some words on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the word microbiome actually means all of the microorganisms. So they're bacteria, protists, nematodes, fungi, viruses, their genetic components, and also their actual products as well. So it's an all-encompassing kind of phrase. The field that we work in and what the area of the microbiome that we work in is bacteria only. So I work on the bacteria, their genetics and their products. So it is a smaller subset of the microbiome, but people, I suppose, are more familiar with the bacteria under this umbrella. So the largest proportion of microbiome is within the distal end of our gut. So the end of our gut is really only responsible for absorbing water back into your gut so you can freely go to the toilet, and also allowing the bacteria to thrive there that need to, I suppose, act on and carry out actions for our body. The upper part of our gut is associated with nutrient absorption and so on, but the very distal end is really where our bacteria sit and wait for the undigested fibre that you consume. So they sit there and wait for the food to feed them, and then they act for themselves, and they reproduce, of course, and so on, but they produce substances for us. They produce neurotransmitters. They produce the exact same neurotransmitters as our central nervous system, serotonin, GABA, glutamate. They produce neuropeptides. They produce short-chain fatty acids that all have a positive effect on our body. They produce elements of the immune system, such as anti-inflammatory cytokines, but they also produce pro-inflammatory cytokines, which have a less beneficial effect on our body, of course, as you know. So having that balance of the right bacteria within our gut is important. And that's why it's important to keep eating fibre, different types of fibre, to feed those good bacteria that reside there. But they're not only sitting there waiting to eat our fibre and produce these metabolites, but they're also very important for our own metabolism, our own hormonal health, and our own brain health as well. So there's specific microbes within our bowel, because we work in women's health. There's specific microbes within our bowel that are really important for our hormonal metabolism. So they are responsive to estrogen, progesterone and testosterone. And really the levels of those specific microbes that are responsive to hormones are there at a certain level because of those levels of hormones within your body.
So firstly, you clarified that there is a female gut and a male gut, right? And this is one of the primary difference is the level of those three hormones that you just mentioned. So that was estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. Yeah.
And I suppose when we're talking about male and female, we probably do need to talk about different genders. I won't bring it into this conversation hugely because I'm not an expert, but what drives the different bacteria are the different levels of hormones. And we know there's different levels of hormones in different individuals within the world, of course. So it's the different, I'm an anatomist as well as a neuroscientist. Mm-hmm. So I often have to use the phrases male and female or woman and man, but I suppose it's the levels of hormones. So it's a hormone-driven gut bacteria and gut environment.
And then the last part of the gut, the distal part, this is where fiber gets digested and that fiber feeds and creates. I didn't realize that so many of our neurotransmitters were produced there.
Yeah. Now, our gut is the largest producer of serotonin. It produces, serotonin is really important for brain health and your mood and sleep. 95% of serotonin is produced within your gut. Okay. And that affects the brain hugely, but we know, that the gut is really responsive to hormones, and it's one of the largest endocrine organs within our body as well. So it's very important. People think the gut is just a simple tube that allows things in and out.
Yeah, it has literally been the most unsexy part of the human body. And it is now the most interesting part of the human body. I would say next to the brain. But it's probably why we have a term called the gut-brain axis, because they are so interconnected and they are such heavy machinery in terms of how our body operates. This is fantastic. I just feel like I had a revelation I didn't.
And Eimear knows as much about this now as She's getting there.
Okay. So what you eat really does matter.
It does.
It really does. Okay. So some of your research, I know some of it goes earlier, but you also have some later studies which provide evidence to show that even in our earliest years, you can respond differently depending on your biological sex to, I wouldn't call it trauma, but how would you call it in your studies? Because I know they were done on rats, right? It was a rat study. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I suppose has been shown in some human studies as well. Even in utero, there is a male or female, and I'm just going to use these phrases as we go, male and female placenta. So in actual fact, the male placenta is much more responsive to stressors during pregnancy as well. You know, our placenta needs to be protective of the baby and, you know, substances that travels to the baby, and really dampens down any stress hormones usually in a healthy placenta and a healthy pregnancy that should stop them getting to the baby. But in actual fact, the same amount of cortisol in a woman pregnant with a boy and a girl, it has more of an impact on a baby boy in utero. And in utero, most of the gut actually develops, and our gut is actually nearly fully developed by the time we're actually born. So therefore, it's, you know, really our in utero experiences, again, depending on the gender, will affect the developing gut. And then the developing gut, of course, as it is born, is sterile, as we know, really is responsive to any type of bacteria, any type of microorganisms, and they take up residence in the baby's gut then. But it depends again. I know we don't have a huge amount of differences with regard to gonadal hormones in early life, but there is something driving brain differences and even brain structure in very early life, in very early young babies, because I work with fantastic people that actually do MRIs on very young children. Baby boy and baby girl's brains are different and have a different structural makeup, even in very early life.
Well, we know that from like just the language studies, right? So we see already differences emerging there. A lot of the behavioral studies have shown differences. So I mean, we shouldn't be surprised.
No, exactly.
But we just didn't understand maybe what could have been some of the driving mechanisms to help shape those behavioral differences or those development differences.
Yeah. And we know the specific species, particularly bifidobacteria, and we've shown this, and I think one of the first studies to show it was in 2004 in a Japanese study. There's a specific population of bifidobacteria called Bifidobacteria infantis that is really important during a very specific time window. It was first shown in mice, we've shown it in rats, and it has been shown in children as well, during a time called the stress hyporesponsive period. And it's a time in animals, so rodents, chimpanzees, humans, where you should have a very low levels of stress. And maternal care during this time is very important for dampening the stress response, whether it's animals or whether it's humans. So dampening the stress response during that time is important for the development not only of the brain, but also of the gut. But during that time, a specific species, Bifidobacteria infantis, is very good at allowing our stress system to be maintained at a level amount. So yeah,
just so I understand, so this time period, is it the time period of the child or the offspring?
Yeah, absolutely.
What is that time? Like, how old are they there?
Up to about 3 years of age in a baby, human baby. And rats,
okay.
Of course, it's like 14 days.
Okay.
Yeah, approximately.
Yeah. Okay.
But I suppose when we think about baby boys still being affected more in early life with regard to stressors, studies have shown that there's higher levels of this bifidobacteria, not specific infantis, but different types of bifidobacteria are higher in baby girls in their gut, even in this very early stages of life, when we know this bifidobacteria is really important for driving the stress response development. So potentially protecting baby girls even in early life against stressors, because baby boys are definitely more susceptible to stressors in utero, but also in the postnatal period as well. So potentially this protects baby girls.
I'm going to just say...
throwing a lot at you, sorry.
I'm just going to say why. Like, why is it different from the first 0 to 3 years? Why should a baby girl be more protected by her gut bacteria than a male baby in the age span of 0 to 3 years?
We still don't know.
We still don't know.
We don't know. We still don't know. So most of the studies have been observational. So all they can do is, I suppose, say what species are there, what stressors affect them, and look at the outcomes. But the actual mechanism and reasons why, we don't know. Still don't know.
Would you care to speculate? I know you're a scientist and I hate that. Maybe Eimear can speculate then, because
no, I'm way out of my comfort zone.
We don't even this is probably Eimear's nightmare. No, it's not, but it's it could potentially be those low levels of hormones, that do drive. I mean, they drive the development of our the XY or XX chromosome. So genetics. So it has to be down to genetics or environment, because there's two, or epigenetic changes. So potentially your genetic environment or your genetic makeup then, not potentially, it is true that your genetic makeup allows you to be more susceptible to environmental factors. And this is what we call epigenetics then. So it could be that the genetic makeup of baby girls just makes them more responsive to this protective bifidobacteria than baby boys, or less responsive to stressors in early life.
But it could be that baby boys could adapt more to their environment, whereas a female a baby would be more resilient and be more reliant on the genetic underpinnings.
That could exactly, because we do need stimulus to develop.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
Exactly. All of our systems, your touch, your sight, everything. Your pain system even needs to be stimulated. But overstimulus is not a good thing. But maybe baby girls can actually, have a threshold and shut off. I
don't want to change.
My genetics are
thank you.
pristine.
Yeah, I've got this.
Yeah, but this could be it. Exactly.
That's an interest. I mean, let's see how people unravel that mystery, because I think there will be a lot of, and I think those are the types of experiments and debates, and those are the types of conversations that I miss. I always thought that that's what conferences were for. Like, I know we shouldn't speculate so much, but I mean, here you have a finding. So let's put our minds together. We all have studied a lot about the body. We know how societies work generally. Can we explain our findings? Can we take them to a whole other level? I think those thought experiments are missing.
That should be what conferences are for.
It would be a lot more fun. It would be a lot more fun. What do you think holds back conferences then from going into these types of dialogues? Do you think that they are too worried about reputation, or that they can't control the conversation?
And honestly, from the side of organising conference, I've organised quite a few conferences at this stage. So much of it is about your speakers and your speakers turning up and worried about the programme, that not enough time is put into more free-flowing panel discussions. I think, not even panel discussions. We have roundtable discussions as well, which are a lot more fruitful, but then not everybody hears those. So you can, panel discussions where everybody hears everything of the 5 individuals sitting on a stage, which is much more broad, and, everybody hears the answers. But the round table, I think, is really where you get most of the really honest discussions happening. But then you have to limit that to about 10 people, and often, people don't want those recorded or anything like that. So I think it's including more round table, but logistically, some of these things are difficult to manage during conference organisations. I think, a lot more networking activities could occur where, I really enjoy always talking to, younger researchers as well. And younger researchers are actually scared. My own lab members, I brought them to Milan in September, and they have like crushes on these scientists that are probably only about 50, I know. And they've said for years, I want to meet this person. And next thing they would close up completely. And I said, but you're not just talk to them. So they need younger members of your lab need to be assisted and encouraged of how to network. I was one of those where when I used to be young, I was scared to actually network.
Oh, same here. Absolutely.
You felt that you were just such a minnow, and that the questions you asked would be silly. And so I suppose knowing that these people that you think are gods and goddesses are open to you asking any sort of question. How did you do this? How did you get there? That would be lovely, I think. Those kind of open discussions and mentoring sessions for conferences are actually what is needed. Eimear, what do you think? Yeah.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. Yeah. And you're going to put yourself out there. Like even getting some scientists on a podcast. I mean, I know they're very nervous because they're afraid that they'll say something wrong. And yeah, I 100% understand the fear, but I also, I think it was a woman from Ireland. I cannot remember her name, but she did a TED talk, and she talked about how, I think she was maybe a singer or something, or she was, okay, I'm going off track, but the point is that the story was that she's at this bar or pub with her family, and she was young and she wanted to go up and sing, but she was afraid to go up and sing because, yeah. And then her mom turned to her and said, "Do you really think that you're that important?" Yeah. And it kind of struck to me, like, we think that everybody's watching us. We think that everything that we say has so much leverage and is gonna, like, the world will collapse if we say something wrong, or if we're not good enough, and it sounded harsh, probably, to this young woman at the time. Clearly, she's used that to feel, her position on a TED Talk stage. But it was like a life lesson. And yeah, I took that and I thought, okay, so you don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to post something. Don't be afraid to, stand up for something that you believe in. People will just remember you. Chances are they rarely remember what you say.
I think, honestly, you've hit the nail on the head. That's been one of the most freeing things I've had. Not that, jeepers, everybody thinks they're fine and they're making some sort of impact. But, you're like, they're not all going to judge me and go, God, I thought she was amazing and she's actually only okay now. Whilst, like, if you go in going, look, I'm just going to, deliver the message, see how it goes. Yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. I think only understanding that for yourself with maturity, it only came with maturity that I realised, the world didn't crash when I actually did say something wrong.
Yeah.
Or not quite
and
right.
The word you used, Siobhain, freeing, is the right word. I mean, what's the worst thing that can happen? You learn something new.
Yeah, or you just chalk it up to experience, right? So
yeah.
I just skipped my morning espresso, and but I agree. I think as a scientist, maybe this could be something really, like, strong to communicate, because it probably influences someone's ability to even go into entrepreneurship. Because as you said, Eimear, I mean, they're so afraid of making mistakes and failing. But yet if they just say, oh, it doesn't matter.
And it really doesn't matter, and actually people love when they can give you feedback that improves your pitch, or that, improves the way you're thinking about something. It makes them feel validated, as well as helping you, correct maybe areas that are weak. So everybody benefits from that process. And I think if you're talking to people about translating science, nobody expects the idea to be fully baked in those early discussions, and it's only through that process that you can develop it to a stage where it becomes something really credible.
And I suppose in some way that's where you are now, the two of you, with some of the latest research that you have, because you mentioned that what you're aiming to do is to deliver targeted, I guess in a way, like seed the gut microbiome for women that are transitioning into menopause. But in order to get all the way there, so we just went through what is the microbiome generally. We have established that there are sex differences that exist from, like, birth or prenatal or natal or prenatal. Yeah, prenatal. So we know there are sex differences, and that will continue most likely throughout life. How did we go from 0 to 3 years to now women at 45 years? How can you help me understand where we are now?
Yeah. So actually, well, around that age of life when estrogen starts to decline, our microbiome, a woman's microbiome, starts to resemble more of a man's microbiome, because of course we have less estrogen and testosterone going through the bowel, because that's how you excrete. You need to excrete your hormones, because higher levels of estrogen, are more prone to cancers and so on, or endometriosis, for example. So we need to excrete our estrogen.
Okay.
And progesterone. So when we're not stimulating our gut microbiome with those estrogen and progesterone to be excreted, during the perimenopause menopausal phase, we tend to have a microbiome within our bowel much more representative of or similar to a man.
Could you argue, or would there be some evidence to support that the reason why it goes down is to maybe offset like the development of cancers that more women would be prone to, or is that completely off the table?
Well, I suppose when we think about the likelihood of development of cancers during perimenopause or
yeah,
before?
so like if you have like you said, if you have too much.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess if I could just could I just continue my life with what if I didn't have menopause?
Or could you continue happily? Well, you're correct, actually, because I see what you mean. Actually, estrogen is produced in so many areas of our body. Women think, and actually women should be told this, because when you're going towards menopause, everybody says, oh, your ovaries shut down. They let you down, and now they're dead, and they're sitting there not producing estrogen anymore. But in actual fact, you produce estrogen in your brain, you produce it in your bones, you produce it in your liver, you produce it in all fat in your body. Most of the fat that you produce it in is from your breast. So in actual fact, as we age, estrogen production in our breast tissue increases. So therefore, if you don't go through menopause and you don't have your decline in estrogen from your ovaries, then you will have maybe too much estrogen circulating around the body. Yeah.
It's also true that as we age, generally we lose a lot of our adipose tissue, right? So one could...
We do. We tend to gain it then, visceral fat.
So the visceral fat is not the same. It won't produce.
No. So much you need a specific hormone within the tissue, within the adipose tissue, to produce estrogen, and this is aromatase. So you need this present. So this is really highly prevalent, and it's linked to cancers and so on. It's really highly prevalent in breast adipose tissue.
Okay.
Yeah. So only specific fat cells will produce the estrogen.
Yeah. That when I read that we produce estrogen in our breasts, I was also surprised. I learned a lot. All I can say is I learned a lot by reading your work. And they may sound like small little tidbits of information, but they were like light bulb moments for me. And yeah.
But it is important because estrogen is so important for brain health, bone health, metabolism. It's really maybe nice if women knew that actually they continue to produce estrogen in their brains and their bones, and not everything is going to fall apart because our ovaries don't produce it anymore. So you can still harness that estrogen that your rest of your body is producing, but they produce it locally for it to work locally. They don't allow it to go into our blood system, to go to our vagina, for example. So once your ovaries shut down, your reproductive system is kind of at a deficit then. So that's really why a lot of vaginal symptoms are seen during menopause.
Right.
It's because the reproductive system is not getting that local production, while your bones, your brain, your liver are still producing it and can rely on those local levels.
Okay, that's very logical. Like the symptoms that come on are very logical based on that shutdown.
And I think to your question about how we got to microbiome interventions for menopause, it's just a really interesting period, because what you see is this bidirectional communication between the gut microbiome and hormone levels. So we know that depending on your hormone levels, there'll be different bacteria resident in your gut. So your hormone levels, to some extent, influence the bacteria that are there. But then the reverse is also true. So your gut microbiome plays a role in the metabolism of your estrogen. So after it's been excreted from the liver into the gut, certain enzymes that are produced by the gut microbiome can deconjugate it so that it's recirculated. So your gut can actually influence your hormone levels. So there's this amazing crosstalk happening. And during menopause, as Siobhain said, you see this change, like quite a significant change in the gut microbiome for women. So it's an obvious target for intervention.
So this was also something else that shocked me in the papers that I read, was that I didn't realize that we saved some of the estrogen, right? So we recycle it, and we recycle it through that absorption in the gut, as Eimear just pointed out. Is that is that where you guys are developing the target? Are you looking at saying, well, if women are still producing like their own estrogen, can we preserve that? And can we seed that part of the gut in order to facilitate the recycling? Is this an idea that you guys are?
Yes, absolutely, because we are missing microbes in menopause. So the specific species, and they're from a community that Eimear has spoken about, and this community is called the Estrogen. So certain species within this community that are important for harnessing your own estrogen that you continue to produce for all of your life are missing. So therefore they can't recirculate it back into your body. So if we pop these back into a menopausal woman, perimenopausal or menopausal woman, there's potential for her to optimize her own estrogen and keep her own estrogen. Because so many women, and this was eye-opening for us as well, I thought so many women wanted to be on hormone replacement therapy, but it doesn't work for every woman. Not every woman can take it. There's still that concept that it leads to cancer. I know it has been disproven, but sometimes once a paper is out, it's out and it sticks in someone's mind.
I was going to ask you. Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do, is trying to give an effective intervention to harness women's own estrogen metabolism, estrogen, circulating estrogen. But this bacteria is also really good at breaking down phytoestrogens. So during menopause, also women tend to eat, tend to be told,
I hope so.
told to eat phytoestrogen rich foods. And these are foods that contain substances such as isoflavones that can mimic your own natural estrogen. So you're eating it and putting back estrogen into your body, but unless it's metabolized, it can have anti-inflammatory effects, these phytoestrogens, but they can't actually interact with the estrogen receptors like your own estrogen. So you need to break them apart and metabolize them. So again, some of the bacteria that we're putting back into the bowel of these menopausal women in our supplement is very effective at breaking down the phytoestrogen. So it's assisting with dietary interventions, but also assisting women to assist themselves and take control of their own estrogen metabolism.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, you feel like you're just giving it back to the woman to say, well, look, if you eat well now, if you take care of yourself, we're going to talk about lifestyle in a second.
Yeah.
We'll seed you again with some of the necessary, like just the missing links, essentially. And then your body will do the rest. Yeah, I think that's so encouraging. Like, it's very encouraging to feel like you're 95% of the solution.
Exactly. And I think because we can talk about symptoms in a second as well, because some of the symptoms, which there are over 40 of, are so devastatingly shocking. It's probably the shock. I think they're like, why is my brain dysfunctioning? Why are these other parts not working? So giving women, this is part of our ethos of FemmeBiome as well. We want to empower women. We want to allow women to take control of their health in a healthy, effective way, and also in a supportive way. So if you as a woman think that you can, take control of your health with, taking a supplement like this, but allowing your body to take back control of its own estrogen metabolism that it's still very good at doing, I think it's empowering for a woman, which is very important for mental well-being as well, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell me more about Microbiome now that you brought it up? Like
the company?
Yeah.
The potential company. Absolutely. Potential company. So FemmeBiome will be the name of our company. And initially we're starting off with FemmeBiome Menopause. So this is the initial supplement that we're talking about today. So reintroducing those missing microbes, providing food for these microbes to allow women to optimize their own estrogen metabolism and to improve brain health, gut health and vaginal health. So this is our first supplement. And Eimear then can kind of talk then about the potential pipeline of the other.
Yeah. So, I mean, menopause it's a really nice place to start because we have this very clear link between what we're trying to introduce and what we hope to see in our human trial. But women experience hormone-driven symptoms throughout their lives. And there's so many different life stages in which our hormones fluctuate. And Siobhain has done really interesting work on the microbiome and levels of anxiety and depression in postpartum women. She's done some really interesting work in the microbiome and pain in endometriosis. So we see a whole pipeline, a whole host of different areas that we can look at to really try and pick apart what role the microbiome is playing in modulation of hormone levels and symptoms related to hormone levels in these very specific different life stages.
All right. And that was the plan that we talked about earlier. You mentioned endometriosis, and from what I know, it can be very painful. Is this why there are some research studies that you have done that include like assessments of pain tolerance, pain thresholds in women, and you've also linked that to some of the microbiome?
That was pre those studies. I think I've worked in pain really for 20 years, initially visceral pain, which is what endometriosis actually is, because it's pain from your viscera, which are your organs. And then in more recent times, then I've carried out a lot of the visceral pain assessments in animals, and then in more recent times I've looked at somatic pain in humans. Mm-hmm. The initial studies are really to see why women are more susceptible to pain syndromes. So I carried out some studies in healthy individuals, which has never been done before, because usually, and we haven't done enough microbiome studies in healthy and baseline healthy individuals to decipher what baseline difference exists between men and women. So that was really, I suppose, the idea behind some of our human studies, was seeing if there's a baseline difference in specific types of pain in healthy individuals and what were driving these differences. So it was really looking at, and some of our first studies in humans were looking at just baseline difference in men and women's microbiota, and was this allowing your stress system to be altered, was allowing your pain threshold and tolerance to be altered, and what were the mechanisms driving this.
Right. And so just so for those that are unfamiliar with the research, I'm aware that, I know it's not just your research, I know a lot of other research studies support this fairly widespread finding that women tend to have lower pain thresholds than men do when you use the same type of, unpleasant stimulation. Yes. So and this was one of the arguments for a long time, which was always associated with why potentially more women have chronic pain conditions than men. We see like that the proportion is quite skewed. There could be a million reasons as to why, but you chose to explore whether or not the microbiome has a link because you also, I guess, knew or have through the years of your studies discovered that there are sex differences right at birth. So that could explain why more young women also have a higher prevalence of chronic pain conditions than their male counterparts. So women have lower pain thresholds, pain tolerance. Yes. So that is a difference. How is that, do you think, related to the microbiome?
Well, we've mentioned how the microbiome is so responsive to hormones. So we know that testosterone is higher, usually in men. And actually testosterone is protective against pain. So we have, as women, have testosterone at certain levels, but not to the same extent as men. So one of the reasons is that the microbiome may be more responsible in men to testosterone levels and have a microbiome that is associated with anti-inflammatory factors, GABA, for example, less glutamate, less of those nociceptive stimuli, such as immune drivers and glutamate, for example. So it could be that the microbiome of males is more responsive to this anti-nociceptive, which is anti-pain microbiome that produce those metabolites that get into our circulatory system and affect our pain pathways within our central nervous system, but also somatically as well in the body. But also, when you look at it as well, and we've done these studies in mice where we've removed the ovaries, we've replaced estrogen. Estrogen is actually protective, when given at stable levels, estrogen is also protective against pain. But what happens is, in the normal, healthy, premenopausal person, you have fluctuations of estrogen and progesterone across the menstrual cycle and across a woman's life that isn't on contraceptive pills or otherwise. And it's really these fluctuations that is associated with higher risk of pain in women. So it's that the estrogen is there, it's gone, it's there, it's gone. So it's that it's not allowing for the constant protective element of estrogen to occur, and also there's not the same drive in the testosterone drive of the microbiome as well. So while we have a more female-specific microbiome with regard to estrogen metabolism, it's not sufficient to protect women against pain syndromes.
Does this line of research also reconcile with, the neuroplasticity that has been pushed out for, I think, 2 decades now? Well, almost 2 decades, 15 years, where, someone suffers an injury and then the injury doesn't quite heal right. And then you have some long-lasting changes in your central nervous system. And because of those because they don't sort of go back to normal, then someone could potentially experience ongoing pain much easier than, to like daily things like warm water could cause pain. Does this still fit nicely into that neuroplasticity, or does it challenge, do you think, a little bit of the thinking around that?
I think it probably has to sit with it, because we know there's an area in the brain called the pain matrix, but then we know that that's different between men and women. So you actually not only have so many drivers in your periphery that are going to make you less or more responsive to pain, but you also have specific neuroanatomical areas that are going to make you more responsive to the perception of pain. So whether the pain matrix in men and women recovers or is potentially more or less plastic, I'm not really sure, but I think it has to sit alongside it. Now, we do have, I suppose, we know that the microbiome does drive changes in volume of specific brain regions that are associated with pain. So it could be that the specific microbiome in men and women will drive differential changes or different neuroplasticity, because it does allow different volumes of brain areas associated with pain. So it could be that different microbes allow you to recover better and allow, I suppose, a decreased risk of what is called central sensitization once you don't recover appropriately from a pain trauma situation. So potentially.
Yeah, I think it will be nice to see in the future how the two lines of thinking come together, because I know there is some strong evidence in like neuroplasticity research, sort of underpinned by neuroplasticity research. And when you said that we cycle, I was just thinking, I wonder if it's when we get injured, like what period, like what stage were we in? Is it, or was it where the recovery was relative to our cycle? Because, you go through different, like if you break a bone, it has very specific stages that it will recover. And maybe some of those stages are more sensitive to changes in our menses, or the hormones associated with our menses. Now I'm speculating. I know that. I can do that.
That's fine. We are.
Yeah. Just put some out there. Definitely speculating a little bit, but it's very interesting to see how they'll reconcile, because I do also, that's some of my background researches in pain and neuroplasticity. So yeah. All right.
Super.
So moving on to, the future for like women's health, are you aware of like the amount of supplements that are coming to the market now? I wanted to talk to you about this because I felt like once I started to research, like what is menopause and, what are the precursors? We haven't yet talked about lifestyle, and I hope to do that before you go. But I was thinking, well, if I wanted to like protect myself, then I went online and was like, okay, can I order like estrogen supplements? And then I suddenly got hit with all these boxes and pills. And then I suddenly realized, okay, this is really where I want the science to be right. Like this is the point. This is my health. I want to do something good for myself. I'm not interested in a company sort of kind of mismatching the science to, we had a topic on greenwashing for our podcast the other day, and that was also interesting. I couldn't help but see the parallels here. What is your opinion now about the supplement market that is targeting women that want to, offset some of their condition or their symptoms?
There's just an enormous volume of supplements available, and you probably saw that in your research.
I was overwhelmed.
It's overwhelming. I think in my initial research, when I started working with Siobhain, there's over 600 supplements on the market for menopause in the US, that have made claims around
and
menopause.
You can just buy them, right? Like you don't need
buy them over the counter, and I guess they range from just vitamin and mineral preparations that say menopause, to different kind of herbal preparations, some that are kind of related to Eastern medicine. So the range is really broad. And I think it's just really important to know that the supplement space is not a regulated space. So while there are some rules and regulations around what you can write on packets, it differs between different jurisdictions. And also it's extremely hard to implement those rules because the category is so vast. And, you know, I think it's really important for women who are looking for things to speak to their healthcare professionals. So talk to your GP, talk to a nurse, a dietitian, a pharmacist, someone who actually has the experience and the skills to maybe look at products, look at validation that's been carried out. The vast majority of supplement products have not done any kind of human assessment of their products. You know, they're just a kind of a preparation that's been made, and they're leveraging maybe data or reputational claims that have been made about different preparations.
or the marketing is done in a way that it makes you think that it's helpful for menopause, but it's actually not. And I think that's also the same storyline that we hear with greenwashing nowadays. You know, the colors of the packages, you know, all like the smallest little thing can be used to manipulate a consumer. But yeah, I really felt it. I was like, okay, I want to do something. But I don't have an appointment yet with my healthcare professional, but let's go into lifestyle, because you mentioned at the very beginning of our conversation that there are actually some lifestyle changes or adoptions that we could do as women, probably also good for men, I'm guessing.
I think so, yeah.
What would those be?
I think probably the first thing is people need to realize that they can take care of themselves, and they should take care of themselves. It's, you know, we've heard so much that it's a busy time in women's lives. It's when their career is taking off, when their children are growing up. But in actual fact, it's more busy than ever. And you're actually excited to be starting, you know, this kind of slightly independent time of your life. But actually, it's never been busier. But you know, you don't have to say, well, I'm just taking care of myself, not taking care of my family or all of this, but you actually need to mind yourself first in order to be able to efficiently mind your family and mind your career. So women do need to just take time for themselves, and take time out and maybe say no to a lot of things that don't interest them, you know, and that means social events as well. I say a no to a lot of social events because some people just... you know, you just don't need to be with them. But to be absolutely honest, just so thinking about taking care of themselves, but, you know, and resting more, sleeping more if they possibly can. I mean, there are certain things we know we shouldn't do. So reduction in alcohol, stopping smoking. But also, I suppose, from a dietary perspective, the biggest thing in the Irish population is definitely not enough fibre. I've studied the gut bacteria and the gut health for 20 years and I still don't consume enough fibre. So what I've recently started to do is I've started to consume the fibre component of our supplement, because it's a really easy way to increase your fibre. It's a very targeted fibre intervention as well, for this stage of life. So increasing your fibre, food first would be super if you can do that. You do need to then, you know, take in 2 litres of water a day in order to make sure everything stays motile within your gut. But eating healthy foods that are really, you know, interesting for you. People think healthy eating is, you know, has to be boring, has to be, you know, bland. It doesn't. There's a lot of healthy, you know, alternatives out there, and we don't have to go for the tofu or the soya. They're really like beautiful fish out there that does need to be consumed for our brain health, for example. We do need iodine as well, which you can also gain from fish. But the fibre component, the omegas from fish, for example, and also then, you know, we still need to eat carbohydrates. People think they've got to steer away from bread, but eat the good bread or actually make your own bread.
I love bread.
I love bread. Don't ever give it up. There is no need to give up bread. No, just steer clear care of the ones that have the 20 ingredients.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually buy good bread on the market, but making your own bread is very rewarding and you feel very proud of yourself. You know, so, and it probably goes off after about 2 days. So therefore make 3 loaves for a week or something like that. But again, you can include lots of these lovely phytoestrogens like flax seeds and things like that in your own bread then, and control one thing at least in your diet by making your own bread at home. And it isn't a difficult thing to do, but it's that therapeutic thing as well. I'm taking control of my life. I'm taking one small step. Bake your bread on a Saturday morning and do that, you know, but trying to get a little bit more exercise. So these things are known for years, and they are hard to change within our lives because they are busy.
100%.
Yeah.
I think, you know,
give yourself a break.
Yeah, the brain has a way of tricking yourself into doing something else.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It convinces you that if you do that first, then you'll get to the other goal, which is just like, you know, eating more fiber. So like maybe your brain will be like, oh, I need to do a lot of research about fiber. No, just go and eat some more fiber.
Yeah.
You know, so like, yeah, but yeah, the good bread, or it could also be fiber rich, like vegetables or not. Yeah. Vegetables and fruits.
Yeah. So different fiber, feeds different bacteria. So they're not that specific, like, you know, one fibre will feed lots of different types of bacteria, but the more different types of food and a diverse palate that you have, or diverse sort of plate that you have, is better for your microbes, of course. And then, you know, putting, as I said, maybe there's certain microbes or bacteria that aren't there anymore in somebody that's feeling a bit bloated, a little bit of sensitivity, they're not sleeping right. So then maybe just the fibre alone or introducing different healthy foods isn't enough. And then you need to put those beneficial bacteria back in. And that's done in a way with fermented foods. We have so many on the market these days. But you know, choose the ones from maybe more reputable, smaller sources. Because I've learned recently, I was at an event recently, and some of the products that are on the market, such as kefir, are just watered down yogurt. They're not actually kefir, which is a lot more complex bacterial-wise than an actual yogurt. But even if you don't want to go towards fermented foods, you could just choose 3 different types of natural yogurts to eat a week, because you need different ones, because you need different bacteria.
So in your roadmap with Microbiome, are you guys also going to address like the education gap? Because, you know, some of these things, 3 different yogurts, I would never have thought of that. I would just buy the yogurt that I would like, and then maybe I would keep that in my fridge. It would never occur to me to buy 3 different ones. Is this in your roadmap?
It's a hugely important part of the strategy, actually, because while kind of the general principles of healthy eating and an active lifestyle have been kind of around for time immemorial, and almost they're not headline grabbing enough anymore, I think people aren't really tuned in to minding their microbes, and actually don't also understand strategies that you can implement to mind your microbes. And so in addition to, so at the moment what we're doing is we're carrying out a human trial or human study. We're in the planning process of a human study for a particular intervention within menopausal women, but we're also trying to build a community, and we're also trying to build our network in order to reach women and provide strategies and information about microbiome, how it relates to your hormonal health, as well as your overall well-being, and kind of start that conversation. So we have recently launched our website, which is FemmeBiome.com. And Siobhain recently hosted as well a seminar down in Cork, titled Microbiome, Menopause and Wellbeing, which tried to provide the women who could attend, with like insight into the microbiome and menopause, but also dietary strategies, exercise, and psychological strategies, actually, to help women cope during this time of transition.
Okay, so the website would be one place to go, and that's where, you know, someone like myself, I could go in and I could join this community. Is it a open forum? What is the community like?
Yeah, so we hope to post, you know, more of our research updates on our website, but we also hope as well that as we develop resources as well, we developed this really nice pamphlet which had like a meal plan for your consuming of 30 grams of fibre per day, which showed, you know, each specific you know, a smoothie will have this much, a slice of bread will have this much. So it was like really easy to map out how to get your 30 grams of fibre a day. But I also outlined as well within it what supplements are clinically validated to help your brain, gut and vaginal health. And also, because I'm a believer of alternative supplements as well, and, you know, ingredients that we can get from nature that have been shown in some studies. So we also included some of those kind of alternative supplements, but did really outline that they haven't been clinically validated. But I really wanted to provide some resources to women of what supplements and what, you know, tools to take away to improve their own health. So we hope to incorporate this into kind of a more comprehensive element on our website as well. But also, yeah, eventually in time, and we have a public and patient involvement panel that we're going to ask, well, to inform our research going forward, of course, what would they like to see from our research, but also tell them how our research is going and what results, but also, you know, what is this valuable, is this not valuable? So to get real public and patient insights into what they would need and like from an educational point of view, because, you know, those 40 symptoms of menopause that we've mentioned, while you can Google them and they have been found on certain clinic websites, you know, it's not that evident to many women. Women have known about hot flushes for years, but the brain health is something we're very passionate about, to be empathetic with women, sympathetic with women, say this is not, you know, the end. These symptoms will pass, but also there's ways to manage these symptoms as you transition from perimenopause to menopause. So it's we want to, within our website, we want to educate women, empower women, but also give them hope for the future of women's health that FemmeBiome hopefully provides.
Oh, this sounds fantastic. I'll definitely go there to check out some of the advice. I'm looking forward to doing that, actually. And I also think that, yeah, in any way that, you know, we can get more women to feel comfortable about talking about this and just, okay, it's normal, but also just to like be there for each other, because I think historically we know that that's also been a bit of an issue.
Yes.
I know it's not the purpose of this podcast, but we do need to back each other up more, especially so at this point in our lives.
Definitely.
Yeah. I would really like to thank you so much for spending time with me and being on Bonded by Science. And I cannot say like how excited I am about what you're working on. And I really, you know, best of luck. Luck never hurts.
No,
never hurts.
We're Irish.
Yeah. Oh my God.
We're green.
That's funny. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. And I look forward to chatting again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shellie.